Private companies are attempting to cool the planet by putting clouds of dust and, well, stuff in the atmosphere. It's an ongoing business. America's starter home is disappearing. Now, they're still building homes, but they're twice as big as they were in 1970. New York's congestion pricing has now been in effect for 1 year. We'll take a look at whether it's worked or not, whether it's a success or failure. And there's a new potential presidential candidate for 2028. His name is someone you've all been waiting for. Steve Bannon, believe it or not, is making noises about running for president. And the New York Times comes in with an intriguing, although not entirely surprising, analysis. What do you know? The judges that Donald Trump has been appointing and did appoint in his first term are nearly always agreeing with him. All that and more today on Filtered.
Welcome to Filtered with TJ Walker.
Hi, and welcome. Thanks so much for joining me today. It is Sunday, a beautiful, beautiful day here in South Florida. Coming to you today, it's January 11th. Sunday, just played another 8 matches of pickleball. Had a great time with family and friends here in South Florida. One of those stunningly beautiful days where it's not too hot, it's not too cold. We started the day out, it was about 68 degrees, nice sunshine and beautiful. I hope it's nice wherever you are today. So let's dive right into the top story of the day. According to The Independent, private companies are now racing to try to change the climate. You've heard of climate change, regardless of where you put on the spectrum the fault of humans and carbon combustion. The earth is warming. It is causing problems for those of us who are still inhabiting it, and a lot of different approaches at trying to solve it. Now, let me be very clear with you and up front. I am not a climatologist. I am not a meteorologist, and I am not someone with a PhD in any geological sciences or any material sciences or a physicist. So having gotten all that out of the way, I do think it's important for you and me as laypersons try to understand various solutions being talked about and proposed regarding climate change. This is a heavily, heavily controversial type of a fix. Now, the standard fix is let's use less carbon. Let's switch to solar energy. Let's stop putting carbon into the atmosphere so that we don't heat things up more. That's the standard approach endorsed by most of the scientific community and most people concerned with climate change. There are, however, some solutions that are not quite mainstream, but they're not so kooky that I feel it would be irresponsible to talk about them with you. So one of them is a heavily funded startup known as Stardust Solutions. They've raised tens of millions of dollars, and this is getting investors excited. Some scientists, I won't say all, some scientists are alarmed by this because they fear the consequences of trying to send rockets up, putting essentially dust in the air to block the sun's rays, hence cooling the Earth's atmosphere. So Stardust has raised $60 million. Let's look at the facts. It's the largest private geoengineering investment ever. There have been other ventures like this. It's a difficult thing to do because you've got to get things in space. You've got to put so many particles up there before it has much of an impact. And you have governments, not just in the place where you're launching, but all over the world, who could say you're really tampering with their societies and could be quite unhappy about this. Now, currently, there's no global ban on geoengineering. 19 U.S. states have proposed restrictions. This company is looking at launching 213 balloons. They want to put sulfur dioxide up into the air, particles that would block the flow of light from the sun and therefore the heat of the sun. The concept is it would cool the earth and keep us from boiling over, keeping us from burning up. Fewer forest fires and all the rest. That's the theory. Now, according to Yanni Yedved, He's a Stardust co-founder. Given the escalating crisis, it would be irresponsible not to do the work now. To be clear, there are many mainstream climatologists, scientists, those working on global warming, who think this whole line of thought is too extreme, too dangerous, kind of taking people off their eye off the ball of what we really should do, which is burn less fossil fuels. David Keith, a climate scientist at the University of Chicago, says this is total, unadulterated bull, and he says something else. Now, from the other extreme, the Environmental Protection Agency Administrator Lee Zeldin says this is climate extremism. It has overtaken common sense. So he sees it as climate extremism. Let's go back a minute, because you may be still thinking, I don't know if I really understand this, TJ. What are you talking about? Here it is in a nutshell. Let's go back in time. In 1815, in Indonesia, there was Mount Tambora. It was a volcano, and it went off. It was the largest volcanic eruption in recorded human history. It released 60 megatons of sulfur dioxide. It was blasted into the stratosphere. Now, the ash and sulfur formed sulfate aerosols, which reflected sunlight back into space. So here's what happened. Global average cooling went down between 0.4 and 0.7 degrees centigrade. So almost as much as 1.3 degrees Fahrenheit. In parts of the world, in Europe and North America, it cooled as much as 3 degrees for the whole year on average. So that is a substantial global cooling. Obviously, if you could figure out how to do it, not hoping for a volcano to erupt, but if you could actually put a knob adjusting the thermostat of the globe, we wouldn't have to worry about global warming. It's not that easy, though. But that's the genesis of this technology, of what they're trying to do. They figure, hey, volcanoes put stuff in the air. It cools things down. What if we put stuff in the air? And that's not exactly the scientific terminology, but you get the overall picture. So 1816, the very next year, became the year without a summer. It snowed in June in New England. There were crop failures across Europe. So it wasn't like this was some unbridled, wonderful thing everyone was celebrating, but there wasn't a problem with global warming back then. It caused famine, food riots, mass migration. Indirect cultural effects. Mary Shelley began writing Frankenstein during this cold, dark summer. So it is pretty significant. Other volcanoes have gone off and had cooling effects as well. So that's the theory. And I have to tell you, I am intrigued by this. And again, if you think I'm way off, you can poo-poo me in the comments. Feel free to do so. But I got to tell you, it doesn't look like global agreements, international law, since that's being scoffed at these days in many quarters. It doesn't really look like the world is going to get its act together, just reducing its reliance on coal, on oil, on natural gas. It's slowing down somewhat, but it doesn't seem to be doing it to the point where any serious climatologist thinks, okay, we're going to be fine now. No need for anything extra or draconian. If we just continue on the current path, global warming will calibrate and will level off and everything will be fine. I'm not seeing anyone say that. So that's why I think we have to at least look at some of these technologies. Now, again, the concern is, just as I mentioned, it happened in 1815. It caused riots, famine, food shortages. So once you change the temperature in one country and maybe you make it a little better, you could make it a lot worse in 10 other countries. You could cause famines. You could cause floods. The weather is a tricky thing, the way it's interrelated across countries, continents, in the world. So it's not to be taken lightly, but it is a possible solution. Now, at some point, if we truly have quantum quantum energy and fusion energy, where we have energy essentially for free. If we ever get to that point, then there could be all sorts of things that are similar. I mean, in theory, you could make teeny tiny mirrors, put them on drones, send them up at various places in the atmosphere, reflect the sun back into space, and be so precise about it, you could almost adjust worldwide temperature like a thermostat. Now, I'm not predicting that that's happening anytime soon, but in theory, if we really could get energy to the cost of zero, well, then something like that would be possible. So I'm going to put myself down in the category of we should experiment with this, but there needs to be heavy regulation. It shouldn't just be a bunch of rando libertarian rich guys who say, I've got an island in the South Pacific. What the heck? Let me shoot it up. And it really wreak havoc on farming, on famine, on cultures, perhaps around the globe. So we're going to see more and more talk of this. I've followed this industry now for a number of years. It does pop up occasionally. It's kind of interesting in that both the community of people who really are fighting global warming and think it's a serious problem often are talking it down. And as I shared with you, the Environmental Protection Agency head and the Trump administration also says it's extremist. So they are kind of getting battled around from various sides. What do you think? I'd love to hear from you. Please post your comments on this whole idea of geoengineering. It's around, it's going to be talked about. It does have controversy, but it might actually help us solve the problem of global warming. And I say might.
Imagine having a communication coach who never sleeps. Meet your new secret weapon, the TJ Walker AI clone. Go to tjwalker.ai and start getting custom coaching 24/7. No scheduling, no hourly fees. I've trained presidents, prime ministers, and Fortune 500 CEOs. But the same exact communication I've delivered to world leaders is now available to you online, anytime at MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Whether you're speaking on camera, pitching a client, or handling a crisis, you need these tools. These aren't fluffy motivational videos. They're practical, battle-tested techniques to help you speak clearly, competently, and persuasively. Go to MediaTrainingWorldwide.com and take your communication to the next level.
Okay, thanks so much for joining us again. A lot of fun stories to talk about in the news today. You've probably heard this. There is a housing shortage in America. There's a problem with affordable housing. That's not new. What is new, according to the Washington Post, is the absence of traditional American starter homes. You know, it's a young couple. Maybe they have one child early on in their career. They're not looking for their ultimate dream house. They're looking for their first house. Young couple. Let's say they're both 25, 27, something like that. They're not finding these homes because they're not being built. They want them, but builders can't make them in a profitable manner. So what's happened? Homes have doubled in size since 1960. In 1960, the average home in America was 1,200 square feet. Now, to many people listening and watching this around the world, that sounds pretty nice. Many countries, arguably most countries, that's a nice home, 1,200 square feet. And that was considered the American dream if you were a young 25-year-old couple in 1960 getting a new home, 1,200 square feet. They don't really make those anymore. The average home size today in America is 2,400 square feet. The median price is $410,800. That's the median price. Now, unfortunately, that's not the median income. The median income is not even a third of that. It's not even 25% of that. Now, the traditional metric for housing in America was you really shouldn't buy a house that is more than 3 times your annual income, which would mean you need, if you're doing it the traditional way, you would need about $135,000 a year as your income. 135,000. Well, the vast majority of Americans households do not make 135,000 a year. So you've got an equation where almost by definition, most people in America no longer financially qualify for a home. Now, things have changed and financing has gotten a little more creative. So it's no longer that hard metric of don't pay more than 3 times your annual income for a house. But it's still a pretty good rule of thumb. And that's why so many people are frustrated. Now, the prices on homes in America have gone up 6 figures just since 2019. The number of 4-bedroom homes, that's 50% of the new builds. Only 20% in 1970s had 4 bedrooms. 2 bathrooms are now standard. But also there's the mortgage rate issue at the moment. Now that can go up and down anytime. But mortgage rates are now still around 6%. So there's a huge, huge problem for people finding housing, especially their starter homes. Now, here's what Dennis Shea says of the Bipartisan Policy Center. Home builders find it easier to build large homes that have a higher profit margin. Christian Costco, who's a mortgage lender, tells the Washington Post, it's almost financially not viable to build what we thought was a starter home. And Chen Zhao, a Redfin economist, says, you were never in the club to begin with. It's kind of dire. That's what's going on right now. Okay, let's look at the profitability for home builders. And full disclosure, I have done work for the National Home Builders Association. This was, 15 years ago. I trained the incoming president of the National Home Builders Association. I do remember at the time being struck by how she told me that, the average home builder built less than 10 homes a year. We think of, these giant construction companies and big private equity companies taking over the home industry, and we think of Toll Brothers and people like that. Most homes in America are still built by very small mom and pop operations. Now, according to the Washington Post, gross margins on starter homes are 15 to 20%, but the net margins are often 5% or less. That's a lot of work, often for a year, to make 5% of your money. And the economy might be great when you start building the house, but if you finish it and now you're ready to sell it, and we're in a recession, then now you're sitting on it for 6 months, a year, and you could go bankrupt if you're a builder. Unfortunately, that happens. Luxury homes, very different. Gross margins closer to 35% in many situations. Much higher dollar profit, and you're dealing with the same amount of regulation. So here's what many analysts are saying about the system, is that it's not the home builder's fault. It's the whole system, all the regulation, the city codes, county codes, sometimes state codes. There's so much regulation, red tape, complexity, that you need the bigger home with the higher price tag in order to make a profit. Now, I can relate to that as a business person. Anytime you have a choice between, do you want to sell a $100,000 product or $1 million profit, or $1 million piece of property, a $1 million product, and you're getting a percentage, even if it's the same, you want the higher priced product to sell because it's going to often be the same amount of work, same amount of energy, same sales pitches, same sales tools, same sales meetings, but you make a lot more. So I understand why from a home builders association or home builders industry, they are much more interested in the more expensive homes. Now, here's some other factors that most analysts think are leading us down this path that frankly isn't healthy. Zoning as economic gatekeeping. I've talked about this before. In my old neighborhood where I lived in Long Island, it was zoned so that you had to have an acre of land. Now, I enjoyed my acre and the hedges and all that. It was nice, private, but you're not going to build a 1,200 square foot house on an acre of land typically, because then the acre of the land would cost a lot more than the home. The economics simply don't work. So that's one of the problems is zoning in so many communities across the country. They're essentially saying, we don't want anybody who isn't, if not wealthy, at least upper middle class. Now, if some communities do that, it's no big problem. But if every community does that, then anyone who is not already wealthy is squeezed out, or anyone who isn't established and upper middle class is already squeezed out. Part of the issue is everybody, and I mean everybody's guilty of this, treats housing as if it's some investment. Oh, I want to buy the biggest house I can because I know I'll always make money on housing. That didn't used to be the mantra in America. 1960, you bought a house to keep yourself warm, to have a roof over your head, a place to eat, a place to sleep. It wasn't seen as some get-rich, quick or slow vehicle. It was just something you needed to live. That's changed now that so many people feel that, oh, I have to have a bigger house. And many believe that, oh, I have to have a big house because wages are going down. Perhaps I had a union job or some blue-collar job that really paid nice wages, and now I don't. Therefore, everything I have, my whole nest egg is in my house. So that's why people want bigger houses. So that's a real problem. So what else is really going on here? Investors sometimes distort pricing. Look, there's always been people. My own grandfather was someone who, because he was a house painter, would sometimes buy houses, paint them, fix them up, and rent them out. So he was in the real estate business. But back then, and we are talking about, late 1950s, 60s, into the 70s, it was seen as something more of you're a handyman, you're a painter, you have practical skills, you can fix up a house, get a few extra bucks. It wasn't something that every single doctor and dentist and somebody with a little extra cash says, oh, I'm going to get rich owning real estate. That's kind of the attitude we have now with many people. And to be fair, it does work out for some people. It can be a good investment. But there's a different set of assumptions in the 60s and 70s. And someone would sometimes just build a house for a relatively small amount of money, sell it, get some kind of profit to someone who wasn't trying to get rich, didn't see it as their vehicle for retirement and their avenue for wealth. So part of it is a lot of people now say, well, I don't want a starter home. I want everything now. I look at all my friends in their mansions on Instagram and Facebook. I deserve a big house. So there's some real problems there too. This is one area where I think I live up to my name. I'm telling you, I'm a sane, sensible centrist. I'm not here carrying water for any one political party. And I will tell you, having lived in so-called blue states like New York for a significant amount of my life, but also in red states, where I am now in Florida, and the purplish states like North Carolina, where I grew up and still have family, I could tell you that the Democrats do deserve a lot of blame for making it unaffordable for developers to build starter homes. The amount of regulation, fees, paperwork just to build a simple 1,200 square foot house, it just isn't worth it. If you're going to go to all that trouble, create a McMansion. Create something you can sell for $3 million and keep $1 million or keep $800,000. If you got to drop it to $2.5 million, there's still plenty of margin. If you're building a $200,000 house, there's simply no margin left. So there's plenty of blame here to go around. I don't think it's as simple as saying these home builders are awful. Well, no, a lot of home builders are barely struggling. I mean, they're barely getting by. They are, in fact, struggling. It's not about greedy corporations necessarily. because part of it is us. We have come to tell ourselves, I deserve the 4-bedroom house with the 3-bathroom and the half acre or the full acre, and I deserve it right now. We live in a culture that says now, instant gratification. You don't have the money, get rich on Bitcoin, and then buy your dream house. That's not working for most people. So where do we go from here? This is an issue that's getting a lot of attention. This is all part of the buzzword of affordability, which is an easy buzzword to say. And in some big cities, short term, you can just say rent control. That typically doesn't work in the long run because it discourages developers from building more. But a place like New York City isn't really that significant in this debate because it's a place of apartments and condos. It's not a place for starter homes. I do think that we're going to see more innovation in Florida, where I am, in Texas, and a number of states where they want to attract more people from high-cost states like New York and California and Chicago. But are we ever going to go back to the days of a simple starter home of 1,200 feet? I don't know. I mean, there's parts of my life, many parts of my life, where 1,200 square feet would have been a huge bump up because I was living in a studio apartment. Now, I do live in a home a little bit bigger than the 1,200 square feet right now. I won't kid you. It's substantially larger. But it took a long time to get here. And we're going to have to evolve as a society to a point where people are going to somehow have to figure out either short-term sacrificing more, saving more, and prolonging instant gratification. Or you're going to have to mobilize politically to change things so that all of the spoils of our society don't go just to the top 10%. Like what you heard? Don't let the algorithm bury us. Subscribe now at substack.com/@TJWalkerSuccess. Want direct access to me live? Want to unlock bonus episodes, behind-the-scenes takes, and full access to my premium courses? Then become a member today. Just go to tjwalker.com/members and choose your preferred platform, YouTube, Patreon, whatever works for you. This isn't just another subscription. It's a full access pass to the tools, coaching, and content that can transform your communication and career. tjwalker.com/members. I'll see you inside. And we are back. I want to give you a special update on what's happening in New York City. I was just there last week and had a chance to see firsthand the result of the congestion pricing. This went in a little more than a year ago, quite controversial at the time. And there have been attacks on this from a lot of people, notably the Trump administration attempting to ban the use of congestion pricing in New York City. Again, if you don't know what it means is at certain times of the day, busy times of the day, in the busy parts of Manhattan. Remember, New York City is 5 boroughs, but when you say New York City and you think of Wall Street and Times Square, and Broadway, that's a relatively narrow slice, the bottom third of one island, Manhattan Island, one borough. So that's the part that's most congested. And until a year ago, it really was faster to walk most places than get into a car, a cab, or an Uber. So they started this program, congestion pricing, where at certain times of the day, you had to pay $9 to drive. The thought was that will discourage people. There'll be fewer cars and traffic jams won't be as bad. Everything will be more efficient. We'll raise money. That was the theory. How did it actually work? Well, it turned out it worked out pretty well. According to a survey by the Times, 11% of vehicles stayed away. That totaled 27 million fewer car trips annually in New York City. traffic is faster, buses are more reliable, transit ridership is up, and the program raised, get this, $500 million, more than half. It raised $550 million. This is money that goes to infrastructure, better roads, public transit. So this did change behavior, not through bans, but through pricing, which is something, market forces, which is something people typically associate with conservatives, conservative economics. And here you had New York City doing it. And here you had endorsements from essentially all the liberals and the Democrats and the progressives in New York City doing it. So it's an interesting mix politically. You have market solutions, market-based solutions for a problem, and you had the liberals, the people who are supposedly anti-market, endorsing it, implementing it. You had people from the ostensibly free market party, the Republican Party, attacking it. And it makes you wonder, was it just because somebody in the other party suggested it, rather than based on a good faith principled argument? I'll let you decide, but let's go through some more of the facts. Again, it started in January 5th, 2025. The peak toll was $9, 73,000 fewer vehicles daily. That's a lot. And I did notice him. And when I'm in New York City, I love to walk. I love it for the exercise. I love it for the people watching. I love it for the window shopping. So if I'm in Manhattan, it's very rare for me to do anything other than walk. But occasionally, I will get in the subways. I did this time. By the way, I've never seen the subways look cleaner than they do right now. I well remember getting into subways in the mid-1980s when I first moved to New York City. Every inch was covered with graffiti. It was completely clean. It didn't even smell bad in the subways this time. I've never seen the streets cleaner. Now, to be clear, I'm not giving the new Democratic Socialist Mayor Mamdani any credit for this because he's only been in office for 11 days. So he doesn't get credit yet. But I do need you to really challenge yourself when you're given this narrative by a lot of the mainstream media, like Fox News Channel and the Wall Street Journal, that New York City is this horrible, out-of-control place. It's really not. And by the way, violent crime is lower than it's been in 35 years. So let's look at some more of the facts. The speed went up 4.5% inside the zone, which doesn't sound like a lot, but in Lincoln Tunnel, that's the tunnel coming from New Jersey into Midtown Manhattan, it was 51% faster. That is significant because I've been stuck in that tunnel before. It's not pleasant to be stuck in a tunnel. Like there was once a Sylvester Stallone disaster movie about being stuck in that tunnel and a big wave coming and drowning everyone. And I think about it when I go through it. So the fact that the Lincoln Tunnel is 51% faster because of congestion pricing is a great thing. Again, it raised $550 million and more than 300,000 additional people started using the subway. And again, the subways are clean. And the subways, contrary to popular belief, much safer than being in a car. Here's the other part I like. 8.6% drop in serious injuries on the roads in Manhattan in the last year. Governor Kathy Hochul, who initially tried to stop this, says traffic is still down, so it's working. John Keyes told the New York Times, he's a Queens resident, I don't like the cost, but I can't deny its effectiveness. So here's a perfect example of an issue where I think it just doesn't get talked about the right way in terms of messaging and how people receive it. Because we're constantly told conservatives like market approaches, like to be in the real world, like to actually solve problems. And here's a clear-cut case of government. And we're always told by conservatives, we don't want Washington bureaucrats telling people in our towns and communities what to do. We're constantly told that. Well, here is a town, a community, which New York City is. It's not a part of Washington, D.C. trying to innovate, trying to become a part of this federalist system, this experimental, diffuse state federation system. It's not the government of Washington, D.C. doing a one-size-fits-all. It's the experimentation. That's what conservatives have told us they've wanted all along, and it turns out they were right because this experiment did work. We're also told constantly that Democrats and liberals only want to see bureaucracy get worse, big cities get worse, everything to be more efficient. And here's an example of them using market forces to make the city of New York City much more efficient. So I see it as a win-win. Look, conservatives get some credit for their overall philosophy of let's let market forces solve a lot of problems. And the Democrats in the city council, the Democratic mayors of New York City, the Democratic governor who eventually let it go through, they're the ones ruling there, and so they do deserve the credit. Do I want to pay $9 every single time I get on any road anywhere? No. But most roads in America are not as busy as Broadway or Fifth Avenue in New York City. So New York City, I want to say congratulations. I've never seen the city look better, and I've been going to New York City for, at this point, more than 40 years. In fact, I moved to the city 41 years ago. I've never seen it look better and seem more vibrant.
Want to communicate like a pro? Go to MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Millions have already transformed their speaking skills. Why not you? This show doesn't run on a lot of corporate sponsorships or big media backing. It runs on caffeine and your support. If you like what you're hearing and want to say thanks, you can buy me a coffee. Really. Just go to buymeacoffee.com/TJ Walker. It's quick, it's easy, and yes, it helps cover editing, hosting, and staying relatively ad-free for as long as possible. Buymeacoffee.com/TJ Walker. Your $3.95 makes a real difference. Want live coaching from me? Bonus episodes? Full course access? It's all waiting at tjwalker.com/members. Join now.
Steve Bannon for president? Really? According to Axios, Bannon is quietly laying the groundwork to run for president of the United States in 2028. Now, supposedly, it's not about really to win, it's about to set an agenda. But I well remember what most people thought in 2015 when Trump announced he was going to run, and it was kind of assumed he wasn't really running to win. He was just running to get attention and get a focus on his brand, maybe excite people more about his TV career, and yet he ended up winning. So Steve Bannon is exploring political action committees. He's courting state party leaders. He's using his War Room, that's his daily video and audio podcast platform, to pressure candidates. Now, all of this comes alongside convictions, fraud cases, extremist rhetoric. I mean, let's not forget, this is the guy that Saturday Night Live, when they wanted to portray him, literally had the Prince of Darkness himself representing Steve Bannon. Here's some facts you need to know about Bannon. He was convicted of contempt of Congress. He served federal prison sentence. Now, we live in an era now, a Trump era, where if you're a convicted felon, many Americans see that as a badge of honor. For some reason, it's no longer considered disqualifying for public office in America. So I guess we have Trump to thank for that. He was pardoned in a federal fraud case. He faced New York fraud charges. He was barred from being a part of any New York charities because of his fraud. He promoted something called We Build the Wall. Donors were allegedly deceived. This is also, again, according to Ben Shapiro, is a PR flag for Jeffrey Epstein. Look it up. That's how Ben Shapiro describes it. I don't know their exact financial relationship, but certainly he was very close to Epstein, has hours and hours and hours of footage where he interviews Jeffrey Epstein, allegedly to help rebrand him, to refurbish his tainted career. He's also someone who routinely attacks constitutional limits. He's certainly someone who dabbles in every kind of conspiracy theory. He is someone who alleges incorrectly that Donald Trump won the 2020 election. And the fact that we're even talking about him really, really does normalize extremism. But this guy, he's got a lot of energy. I'll give him that. You do see him everywhere, whether he's on Bill Maher, his own podcast for 4 hours a day. Now, people sometimes think I'm hardworking. They see me here every day. This guy is hardworking. I mean, he has his finger in every pie. 4-hour podcast. He's busy fomenting revolutions in Europe and around the world and promoting far-right extremists all over the world. He has global agendas. And now apparently being a potential presidential candidate in the United States is a part of his agenda. So again, he's been held in contempt. It used to be contempt meant something to people. Now, again, it's just seen as, well, I guess I owned the liberals or this, somebody I don't like. That's somehow seen as a badge of honor. He did serve time in prison. He's defied lawful subpoenas. He's done everything possible to undermine the whole concept of oversight, and he loves to play the martyr. So a little more about the allegations where he was found fraudulent. There was this thing called We Build the Wall. Donors were promised that 100% of the funds would go to build the wall. They weren't. And ultimately, there was a federal wire fraud indictment. But his buddy Trump pardoned him. But not before the state could start prosecuting him. He was banned from being involved with charities. And he victimized his own supporters. He was a grifter. Now, this is not a problem specific to Steve Bannon and an era of Trump University. Remember that one? Trump steaks, Trump Bibles. The whole idea of being a grifter, taking advantage of your own supporters, again, to many is seen as a badge of honor. Oh, you're a good businessman if you can grift and steal from people and get suckers. Now, to be clear, there is no evidence yet that he personally did anything inappropriately illegal with Jeffrey Epstein. But, I mean, all we really know about this guy is he's a criminal. He served time in prison. He likes to spend time with people like Jeffrey Epstein, and he likes to defraud people. And it's truly, truly bizarre that someone like this doesn't feel shame. I mean, we used to live in a culture where Spiro Agnew, a name many of you don't remember, but he was the vice president serving with Richard Nixon and was elected in the 1968 election. He was caught essentially stuffing wads of cash in envelopes in his pocket. He was caught and he was ran out of office. He had to resign in disgrace. And you know what? He realized it. He felt shame. He didn't just say, oh, it's all fake news. He basically went and hid in the shadows. He went to Rancho Mirage in California, and he lived out his days playing golf. And we didn't have to see that he was rehabilitating himself by running for president or emperor of the world or anything else. Those days of feeling shame from being caught red-handed, grifting, committing frauds, I guess it's over. So Steve Bannon, it's the fraud and the grift that bothers me. For some people, it's the fact that he never shaves, looks scruffy, and for some reason, his sartorial choices of wearing 16 different shirts and looking frumpy and dumpy, that bothers a lot of people. I can live with that. But I guess this is the logical consequences of a grifter in chief that we have right now. It sends a message to all other grifters and felons. Hey, come on in. The water's fine.
We'll be right back after this break. Want to advertise here? You better be legit. No crypto, no junk food, no supplements. Go to tjwalker.com/advertise. Most people can't afford a full-time coach, and even if you could, good luck finding one who's available when you need them. That's why I created the TJ Walker AI clone. It's built on my 40-plus years of real-world coaching and training. You get my exact advice, style, and frameworks instantly. Ask it how to handle a tough question, get feedback on your elevator pitch, rehearse your next big talk. This is the next generation of communication coaching. It's smarter than an app, more personal than a course, and always ready. Start using it today at tjwalker.ai. You'll wonder how you ever did without it.
Welcome back to Filtered. I'm your host, TJ Walker. Thanks so much for joining me today. Fascinating front page story in today's New York Times and lead story on their website as well. According to the Times, Trump appointed appellate judges voted 133 to 12 in favor of his agenda in 2025. That is a 92% rate. It's unprecedented in American modern history, really in all of modern history. Appeals courts now routinely reverse lower court rulings blocking executive power. The pattern suggests outcomes are increasingly known in advance. That's kind of a polite way of the Times saying an independent judiciary out the window, it's gone. We now live in an era of a kangaroo court. We now live in an era where it's essentially anything you want to say before we pronounce you guilty, or in the case of Trump, anything you want to say before we announce that Trump gets to do whatever he wants. That's essentially where we are. What the Times did is they analyzed 900 cases, and they found, again, 133 cases where the Trump-appointed judges just said, hey, whatever Trump wants, he gets. And they're willing to overrule other lower court findings. Only 12 were against Trump. Now, if they were other Republican-appointed judges, Bush, other people like that, then they agreed with Trump 68% of them. That's a pretty big difference between 68% and 92%. Democratic-appointed judges agreed with Trump and sided with him 27% of the time. In district courts, 25% were pro-Trump. In appeals courts, 51%. On the Supreme Court, 88%. Now, Trump has 60 appellate judges that have been appointed. So it's a huge, huge number. Here's what one former judge says, Mark Wolf, former federal judge. If you're an impartial judge, the same party is not going to win every time. He's essentially saying we no longer have impartial judges. Now, Chief Justice John Roberts, who was not a Trump appointee, said we do not have Obama judges or Trump judges. This was in response to President Trump complaining anytime he didn't get a ruling, it's because it was an Obama judge. So Trump always assumes everyone is corrupt and as transactional as he is. So he just assumes anytime someone doesn't give him what he wants, it could never possibly be for a principled reason, for a legal reason, for a reason based on societal norms or the Constitution. No, he just assumes the only reason is you're a partisan against me and you hate me and you want to get rid of me and you're unfair. And he's the victim. That is the assumption. But it is troubling because it's obvious to most people now that whether you love Trump or not, and hey, some do, according to polls, at least 35% of Americans, sometimes as many as 40%, support this president. But for the rest of America, it's pretty obvious that this guy only cares about himself, and absolutely no decision will be made other than looking at it through his filter of how does this benefit me personally, Donald J. Trump. So it's not necessarily about helping the oil industry or America first or any of that nonsense. It's about what helps him. So we already know the White House is no longer trying to do anything in an impartial way. And it's also pretty obvious that the House and the Senate is completely under the control of this administration. Republican members of Congress, when they're speaking on background or not for attribution, all tell you, or many tell you, let me not overstate, many tell you that they can't stand Trump. They think what he's doing is unconstitutional, horrible, horrific, should have been impeached, but they're afraid of him. They're afraid of one nasty tweet or one nasty Truth Social. Not only is their career over, not only do they have a primary opponent who's going to have $1 million in the bank account by sundown, but they're literally afraid of their lives, of being attacked by the henchmen of this despot. So we already know the White House is essentially gone as an institution in America that would look out for all Americans. We know the House and Senate are essentially gone. We certainly see the Supreme Court on an almost daily basis making decisions where they're saying, oh, it's Trump, do whatever you want. The media landscape is increasingly, whether it's the number one news channel, Fox News, whether it's the number one listen to podcast like Joe Rogan, are essentially all in the tank for this administration. The one thing that was sort of keeping some centrists, Democrats, liberals, progressives, and others, center-right people who don't support Trump, and center-left people sane was, at least we had the judiciary. Maybe not the Supreme Court, but there's a lot of other good judges out there. Here's the problem. Trump has stacked the deck. And whether he's looking every judicial nominee in the eye and saying, you're going to vote for me every single time or I'm not appointing you, do we agree? He might not be stating it that directly, but it's certainly implied. If you are ambitious and you're a graduate of a law school in America and all you care about is power, you know what you need to say and do. You need to say everything and anything Trump wants to do is constitutional. Any law that tries to stop him, any lawsuit that tries to stop him is left-wing radicalism. It's unconstitutional. It's ridiculous. It's dismissed. That is your fast ticket to, if not the Supreme Court, an appellate court or a federal judgeship or a high-profile position in the Department of Justice. So that is the current environment shaping young legal minds who are ambitious and don't really have any strong particular opinions on judicial philosophy other than they want power. And there are a lot of people like that out there. They want to get ahead, and they can see the news every day as well as you can. They see, okay, this attorney was a private attorney, maybe worked for free, maybe didn't get paid by Trump, but now they're getting the reward of high-profile positions in government. Maybe you get to be the attorney general. You'll get so famous that even if Trump didn't pay you as his private attorney, you're going to be rich once your tenure's over in government life, and you'll be famous. So, or maybe you'll get the ultimate prize and become 1/5 of an entire majority of a branch of government, i.e., being a Supreme Court justice. That could be the reward. So it's quite troubling. I would recommend that you look at this story in today's, it's January 11th, 2026, front page of the New York Times, analyzing a detailed analysis of court decisions. Because unfortunately, and I'm guilty of this, many, many Americans They follow the Supreme Court, but these appellate, that's confusing. Who are these appellate judges? They have tremendous power. They're the ones who time and time again have struck down earlier decisions from judges saying what Trump did was unconstitutional, wrong, stop it. They're the ones who say, let's put a stay on this. That's a legal way of saying, let's put a pin in it. Keep doing what you want, Donald. We'll maybe talk about this in 6 months. We don't want to slow you down. That's what's happening by the henchmen and henchwomen, let's be fair, that Trump is appointing to our judiciary. So I have a sad message for you right of center anti-Trumpers, for you centrists, for you left of centers, or for you mainstream moderate Democrats, for you progressives, for you liberals, and others. The courts are not going to save you. The courts are not going to save you. Trump, while he may be extraordinarily lazy and intellectually lazy in many areas, he's done his homework on these judicial nominations and this judicial process, or he put someone into power who did the homework, and it has paid off quite nicely for him. He has the judiciary in his hip pocket right now. And if you think our judges are going to restore democracy, you haven't been paying attention.
Want to communicate like a pro? Go to MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Millions have already transformed their speaking skills. Why not you? This show doesn't run on a lot of corporate sponsorships or big media backing. It runs on caffeine and your support. If you like what you're hearing and want to say thanks, you can buy me a coffee. Really. Just go to buymeacoffee.com/TJ Walker. It's quick, it's easy, and yes, it helps cover editing, hosting, and staying relatively ad-free for as long as possible. Buymeacoffee.com/TJ Walker. Your $3.95 makes a real difference.
It's time for questions of the day from students. I try to end every show being helpful to you in your quest of being more successful in your career, your personal life, your professional life. So I take students from questions. I do have 12 million student enrollments for my online communication skills, personal development courses. So if you ever want to check those out, you can go to MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. So I typically end each show by taking a question from one of my students. This one comes from Mateo, who is in my course on charisma. You can develop charisma. The question is, how can using a teleprompter like a news anchor enhance your charisma while speaking? Okay, Mateo, this is a complex issue because many people feel that, oh, wow, if I just use a teleprompter, I'm going to look great because I don't have to worry about forgetting things, and I'll look professional like a news anchor. And all of a sudden, they start reading like this, and their head is frozen, and their voice sounds monotone because they are reading at the same speed and the same tone. And they stop moving their hands, they stop moving their face, they stop moving their body. Their voice becomes stilted. So not only will using a teleprompter not make you look or sound charismatic if you use it for a speech, it can actually make you 1,000 times worse. It can make you horrible. Remember, it's just a piece of technology. Any technology can be used to help or abused to harm. A steak knife can help you eat a delicious steak. It can also be stuck in somebody and cause damage and death. Just depends on how you use it. I've seen many an aspiring politician really ruin their careers if they are speaking at a national political convention where they often use teleprompters, typically always in American political conventions. And they just did such a horrible job with it. So it is possible to use a teleprompter effectively, but don't use a teleprompter because you think it's going to save you time. Oh, I don't have to learn my speech now. I've got the teleprompter. No. If you're going to use a teleprompter, you need to spend even more time rehearsing. You need to spend more time preparing, getting comfortable with it. First of all, there's a couple of different types of teleprompters. Until recently, I was using a teleprompter every day for the show. I'm not doing that anymore for other reasons. But a news anchor would use a through the lens teleprompter. You typically only need one. Politicians, if they're in front of people, use an executive teleprompter where there's the two panes of glass, typically about 8 feet in front of you, one to your left, one to your right, and you're going from one side and you're going from the other. So the key is you got to practice with it. You got to rehearse. And these days, the easiest thing to do if you are speaking on a Zoomcast or a podcast or anything like that, or you're recording a video, is to use something like Smart Prompt. Now, I'm not an affiliate of theirs, but that's an app I use where it's triggered with your voice. It uses AI, it hears your voice, and it advances the teleprompter. So you're not reading it at the same speed, which makes you sound robotic. If you want to stop and pause, the teleprompter stops. If you want to go a little faster and read more, it will go faster too. So that's a great inexpensive way of using a teleprompter for any of your own videos. Typically, for politicians of particular stature, if they are in front of a large audience and they're using a teleprompter, they have someone behind the scenes with a knob controlling it faster or slower. And that person, you better be nice to that person. Because if they fall asleep or go out for a snack, you're in big trouble as a politician or as a speaker, because it's not going to move without you. So what I do recommend to come across more charismatic with a teleprompter is, first of all, imagine what would happen with the speech without the teleprompter. I would recommend you still have a page of notes. So if the teleprompter doesn't work, and they do occasionally break, you couldn't care less. You're ready to speak. The next thing I urge you to do is make sure you have an interesting, memorable message for your audience. Because if you give a boring data dump and you're using the teleprompter and it's smooth and professional, nobody cares. No one's going to like you. So the fundamentals are still the same, whether you use a teleprompter or not. Make sure you have interesting ideas, memorable ideas, stories to make them come alive. That's always most important. Next, you got to practice your speech on video using the teleprompter until you like what you see and you're convinced you're coming across your very best. If you do that, yes, the teleprompter can be a great enhancement. The reason to do a teleprompter, I believe, is if it is a really big, important presentation, an inauguration, you're chairman of the Federal Reserve, you're a secretary of state, you're a president, and one wrong word can cause a lot of controversy or scandal or move markets, and you want to get everything just right. Teleprompter can be great. For most people, most of the time, most business executives, you're far better off not using a teleprompter. You're far better off using a simple page of notes. But regardless, if you do use one, I hope you use it wisely. But Mateo, thanks so much for asking the question. Thanks for being a student. I'm TJ Walker. I want to thank you for spending time with me today and putting a spotlight together on some of the top issues in the news. It's fun as always. If you got any value out of this show, please leave a review. If you're listening on a podcast, whether it's Spotify or Amazon Music or YouTube Music or iHeartRadio, any of them, we love them all, then please make sure you're following or subscribing to the show. And please leave a review. If you're watching on YouTube, TikTok, any other social media platform, then please subscribe there, follow there, sign up for notifications, leave comments, and tell your friends. I'm TJ Walker. Thanks so much. I will see you tomorrow. Hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend.